Okay, we're recording. All right, hey everyone, thank you for coming today. My name is Karen Lewis. I work in the English Undergraduate Studies office, and this is our session on the English Honors Program. And so I'm going to introduce Professor Jason Rudy, who is currently the director, and he is going to give you all the details.
Hi everyone, it's good to see you. And as Karen just said, I'm a professor in the English department. I've been teaching at Maryland since 2004. And this is my 5th year directing the English Honors Program, and it's been a real delight. So I'll just give some big picture overviews of the program and then give you a space to ask any questions you might have. So the students become a part of the English Honors Program for multiple reasons. There is not in any way a single track or motivation. So some students plan to go to graduate school, and if that is the case, then English Honors is a fantastic way to prepare for the kind of independent work that you'll be doing as a graduate student. And it's also a great way to prepare a writing sample that you can use for your graduate school applications. So if you're applying to graduate school, usually you need 15 to 25 pages of formal writing, and that can be overwhelming if you've done regular coursework that generally won't ask you to write at such a length. So, so this is the place where you will have a structured, kind of welcoming environment where you can do that kind of work. A lot of students also take the honors program simply because they want to pursue a project that they're passionate about. So if you have stumbled on an area that you are really interested in, but you haven't been able to dig in as deeply as you might have wanted to in your coursework, then the honors program is a place where you can continue that line of thinking, and you can, become an expert in that area, whatever it is. And I mean that. So as a director of the program, I will in no way limit what it is you can do for your thesis. I will help you shape that thesis. I'll help you develop a sense of what a realistic project is, what anyone could realistically do in 25 to 30 pages of writing. But I'm not going to tell you that any particular topic is off limits. So we have students writing on everything from, choosing a novel that they are passionate about and then writing about that, and those novels stretch from 18th century to modern day. We have a student who's writing about character development in video games. We have someone writing about political rhetoric, someone whose project kind of developed a script for an online video kind of installation having to do with immigration from Mexico, the experiences of people trying to immigrate from Mexico to the United States. And there was a great honors thesis recently about representations, or the language used to talk about Gloria Steinem, the feminist icon, in the New York Times from the late 1980s through the mid 1990s. So kind of trying to track how her public persona changes and how the rhetoric of writers for the New York Times shifted to account for those differences. There's a great thesis on the novel Their Eyes Were Watching God, and looking at how the reception of that novel early on was fairly negative, because a lot of Black writers at the time did not see the kind of dialect that Zora Neale Hurston was using as kind of reflecting what they wanted the public image to be of Black Americans. So it wasn't until the 1970s that novel took on a status as really kind of canonical and representative. So the student was tracing the shifting reception of that novel, which is really interesting, fascinating. So what I'm trying to get at is that there really is no limit to the ways you can approach an English honors thesis. And that's part of what's pleasurable for me, because my background is in 19th century British writing, but through my experiences as director of the honors program, I've gotten to learn from all the students in the program. I've experienced the research process through all of these different projects, and it's made me a better thinker and scholar. So those are some of the reasons why you might do an English honors thesis, but they're all, what I would say more broadly is that even if you have no inclination towards graduate school, having done an English honors thesis is a great, it's something great to have in your back pocket. Often when you go to a job interview, a potential employer will ask you, what have you done that shows your independent, your independence as a thinker or your independence as a worker? And being able to say, well, I spent 3 semesters doing independent work writing an honors thesis is a great indicator, a very clear indicator that you're the kind of person who can take a project, go off on your own, do that work as an independent thinker, and then, produce something of value. So I do think that our students who finish the program really have a leg up in job interviews in that regard. Okay, so how do you, what is the program? What does it look like? You apply, if you're a junior, you apply this semester. If you're interested in doing a creative thesis, I should have said earlier, some of our students write creative theses. We have collections of poetry, collections of short stories. Some people write screenplays or dramas. This year, there's a student who's doing an extraordinary kind of mixed thesis that mixes poetry with autobiography and then scholarly reflections on modernist architecture and the positionality of queer people in relation to public spaces. So I'm so interested in this thesis. It's amazing because it's just it's so generative of thinking and so creative. So anyways, if you want to do a creative thesis, October 15th is the deadline. So it's pretty soon. And you have to apply directly to the creative writing program in the English department. If you intend to pursue a scholarly thesis, you apply November 15th, and there's a link to that on the English department website. But I'm going to just put in the chat the direct link to the form. So it's a Google form that you fill out, and all of that information gets sent directly to me when you submit it. And just to clarify, the reason we have the 2 dates for submission is that students who apply for creative writing, if they get rejected from that, you will know before the deadline for a scholarly thesis. And the idea is that you have then the opportunity, if you wish, to apply for a scholarly thesis if it turns out you're not going to be able to do a creative thesis. If you're admitted, then you begin the program in the spring, and you enroll in a 1-credit course, which is English 370. And that course is designed to help you figure out what you're going to write your thesis on. So we talk about research methods, we kind of brainstorm, we do a lot of peer activities where you're talking with other students in the honors program, trying to figure out what is most exciting, what would be of most interest. And then you write a prospectus. So by the end of the spring semester, you have a document that is a prospectus that has a bibliography of scholarly sources. If you're doing a scholarly project, the bibliography for a creative project would be works that inspire you, other creative works that you'll be using as inspiration. In the fall of your senior year, you will enroll in a 2-credit course, English 373, which is structured to help you draft your thesis. So you turn in various stages of the thesis through the semester. And by December, you will have a 20-page draft of your thesis. If you're writing a scholarly thesis, if you're doing a creative thesis, then you'll have something substantive that reflects roughly 80% of the work you intend to do for the thesis. And then in the spring of your senior year, so the last semester of coursework, you will you'll take an independent study with your honors advisor, and you will submit on March 1st the finished draft of the thesis. You'll get feedback on that, and by early April, you will turn in the final thesis. And in that month, you will have a thesis defense with me or whoever is honors director, your advisor, and then a second reader who will kind of come into the project in the later stages. That word defense sometimes really intimidates students, and I prefer to frame it as a friendly discussion, friendly conversation about the work you've done, because that is honestly what it is. Once you get to the defense stage, everyone is invested in your project. Everyone wants you to succeed. And what we really want to do is to get you to just talk really deeply about your experience, what's been valuable about it. And if you're going on in any ways and want to continue the work, then we want to talk about what the next steps might be in the project. That's the big picture. Along the way there, you'll enroll in 2 classes that are they're seminars for honor students, and those are called, they're listed under English 428, and every year there are different topics for those seminars. These are classes that English professors love to teach, and they actually compete to teach these courses. So they tend to be really high energy. They're fun to be a part of because they're smaller, they're limited to 15 students, and everyone in the classes is really enthusiastically engaged. So it has a kind of special flavor to it. And we like to provide that space for honors students to really dig deeply. There are other ways of getting through the program. So we get a lot of questions about, what if I want to study abroad? The answer is we can work around that. So if you have questions about that, you should write to me and we can have a conversation about that. What if you want to graduate early? If you're planning to graduate in the fall of your last year rather than in the spring, well, we can work around that too. You would just write more in your last semester. You do all the work in that fall semester. And what you'd probably do is figure out a way to get some work done over the summer before that last semester. So that's all manageable. Karen, have I left anything out that you can think of? Yeah, so that's the big picture. And it's really a program for you and for you to make the most of, depending on what your interests are. And I'd be really curious to know what kind of questions you might have.
So I do have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Teresa. It's kind of a question specific to me. I'm actually a second bachelor's student. I have a bachelor's from Maryland already in kinesiology. So I guess my question would be, because I was kind of talking to my advisor about it. I know you said that you apply in your junior year. So I don't know what technically, like what year I would be in. So, because I've only taken the required English classes, the freshman English and technical writing, and this is my first semester taking like 301 and then a comparative literature class. So I guess my question is, like, would it be appropriate to apply now, or should I wait until after the 301 class to kind of see, how that goes? Because I did see on the website that it said 301 is an indicator as to, how well you would do in an English honors class. My goal is to go to grad school. So, I thought that this would be appropriate, and my advisor thought so too.
I think the more, you certainly could apply. There's no reason why you couldn't. I think the most important question would be when you hope to graduate. Okay. So Are you aiming for spring of 22?
I am.
Okay,
Yes.
then this is the time to apply then. So that,
Okay.
yeah, there's nothing in the academic history that you described that would make it any kind of problem for you to apply now, and I strongly encourage you to do so.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
So I had a question as well. I was wondering about the creative thesis and if there was less of a page restriction for that. So if, for example, I wanted to go over the 30-page general, like, I guess, area, if I would be able to do that.
Absolutely. Last year, someone wrote a play that was about 90 pages long. There was a collection of short stories that was about 60 pages long. It was 3 short stories, each one about 20 pages. So yes, there's no page. It's not useful to talk about page restrictions or anything with respect to creative work, because it should be creative and it should be what you want it to be, right? Yeah. So definitely not something to think about or worry about.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I would say if the students who have the most success applying to creative writing reach out to faculty. So if you've taken a creative writing class with a professor in the English department, you should let that person know that you're applying and try to kind of build a conversation that will lead to you being admitted. Because they're definitely very particular about whom they admit. So the more you're in conversation, the more likely that'll work out.
I have one more question along those lines as it relates to the faculty advisor.
Yep.
So I'm not 100% sure like I do want to do a scholarly thesis, but not sure what direction I want my research to go into once I get into graduate school. Are we paired with the faculty advisor, or is that something that we go out and we solicit for ourselves once, if and when we get into the program, or do we have a say in it?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. That's a really great question. So you are the one who figures that out. But my job as honors director is to help you with that process. So first of all, there's no expectation that you know what you want to do when you enter into the honors program. And that's true for the creative line and the scholarly line. We're not looking for anything that's fixed in place. We're looking for potential and kind of drive and passion for what you're hoping to do, right? Once you get into the program and you take that class, English 370, then we work on figuring out what direction you want to head in, and then I will chat with you and say like, oh, do you know Professor so-and-so? She has some interest in that. What about this other professor? And then, some students feel very comfortable going directly to those professors and just introducing themselves. For other students, they prefer for me to send an introductory email, and I'm always happy to do that, just to say, hello to, colleague X. I have this amazing honors student and she would really love to meet with you, and here's her information, so you can expect an email from her, that kind of thing. So we always figure it out. And then the other thing to know is that while your main advisor will come from the English department, a lot of students have interdisciplinary interests. So we have students who are double majors in politics and English, or business and English, economics and English. And a lot of times the thesis project they develop is also interdisciplinary. Okay. So for example, last year, a student who was an economics and English double major wrote a thesis about the op-ed writer Paul Krugman, who's also a Nobel Prize winning economist, and was analyzing the rhetoric that Krugman uses. So that student's second reader was a professor from the economics department. So you have kind of some leeway to reach out to other faculty that you may know on campus or that you may want to work with in some way, depending on what direction you head in.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And we have a question in the chat. For the creative thesis, do you need a recommendation letter from a faculty member for the application like you do for the scholarly thesis? If you're not sure, I'll go look at the application.
Yeah, go
really
look
quick.
at that. This is the thing is I don't look at the creative applications until the decisions are made and then sent to me.
1 moment.
That's a great question though.
I just had a quick question. I'm sorry if I missed like the conversation about the topics of various honors theses. I had a class that ended before the
Sure.
information
No worries.
began. But I was wondering, are there like certain constraints on the topics for honors theses? So like, for example, I would be potentially interested in doing something in translation, like focusing on a work in translation. But I was just wondering, like, does something like that drift too far into like comparative literature? Like, is it necessary to like work on something in English? Or?
No limits at
Cool.
all.
Thank you. Awesome.
I'd love to see someone working on translation, and you know, comparative literature is part of the English department. So that's very much, I mean, that's very much in the world of what we do in English at Maryland. So absolutely, that would be fantastic. But even if it weren't a part of what English does structurally, it would still be welcome, because there genuinely are no limits to where you can take your thinking, as long as you can frame a good reason for doing so. And then my job will be to help you shape it so that it is an effective essay that can fit within 25 to 30 pages. A lot of times when students begin, the projects they imagine are quite large and would be appropriate for a dissertation or a book. So part of what we work on together is figuring out what's a slice of that project that you can tackle for the honors thesis. And then if it works out and you really love the project, you can imagine a future when you go on to do more work on that topic.
Just to follow up, I took a look at the creative application and it does not require a letter of recommendation.
Thank you. Did we have other questions in the chat?
No, we do not.
Okay.
All right. If no one has any other questions, I'll go ahead and turn the recording off.